Hey, what's up? I'm Boss, and this is Basil. I'm going to show you a few tricks today how I prune and propagate my basil to make sure that there's always plenty of bushy, well-producing plants around for me to eat. Let's go. So what I have here is really just your basic, ordinary culinary basil. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's not a unique variety, but I love the flavor and it grows really well. What I like to do is grow it hydroponically. So you can see this is sitting actually in a laundry pod container. I can't quite get the roots out that way, so we'll take the whole lid off. Growing in a net cup. It's got a pretty decent little root mass there, right? This was grown from a cutting. This was not planted from seed. I grew this by cutting a branch off of another basil plant. I'm going to show you what I do in this situation to propagate this, how I get it to grow new roots, and then I have basil for days. It also has the benefit of making your parent plant bushier. Let me grab my pointy pruners and we will get to work. I have just sterilized these using alcohol so they won't introduce pathogens to our basil plant when we make our cutting. Something important to note is that you want to cut in a specific spot. If we just cut anywhere, we're going to cause problems. What we really want to be doing here is promoting side shoots or branches to grow out of the parent plant, and then ideally trimming in a place that allows us to grow roots out of our cutting if we want to create new plants. We're always going to be trying to cut just above a set of leaves, right? And the reason is, you can actually see it's happening here. We have a leaf here, and we have what you might call a sucker if we're talking about like tomatoes or another plant. But you see this little branch or a little set of leaves that's growing out of the armpit or the crotch of that leaf node. That's going to branch out and create a bushier plant. If we cut above it, that means that the hormones that are telling this plant to grow up are going to say, no, wait, let's start growing out and have branches, right? Auxin is the hormone we're talking about. So clean, cut in the right spot, and this is easy. I think in this case, I'm just going to cut tops off. It's going to look a little funny, but we'll deal with that. So in this first case, I'm actually going to kind of go cut this top off. That's not going to propagate well, but it's going to taste delicious. Over here, the other side, we have this nice branch. So we're going to cut right above that branch. And that'll leave us some stem, some leaves, and that'll propagate well. Again, I'm just going to come in here right above that node, chop it off. All right, I'm going to make a few more cuts here. I'm actually going to go all the way down on this one. I am, because there is a leaf node here. It's already got branches growing out. That'll give us the growth we want. That's more stem than we need, so I'm actually going to cut this down a little bit. That'll be a good spot to grow roots. Same treatment here, actually. There's a leaf node way down here at the bottom. I'm going to come all the way down there. Why not? Have a little fun. Be brave. Probably 2/3 of that I'm going to chop off and eat, and then drop this in some water. So trim off that extra stem. Our parent plant looking a little bit sadder. I'm actually going to take some of these leaves at the bottom off. Just the leaf, not the entire branch. Good to eat. This is purely for aesthetic reasons, and putting more of that energy into growing new branches here instead of taking care of these big fat leaves. You see some of these have some spots on them. That's actually, I over-fertilized. I put too strong of a fertilizer mix in. Kind of burned the leaves a little bit. I've backed it off and it's a little happier now. Here. All right. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but you'll see that'll grow back fast. Now, what do we do to make this into a new basil plant? Let's look. Okay, we have our basil clippings, right? I've got some jars of water. Again, this is just tap water. I haven't done anything to it. There's no nutrients in it. This has a lot of leaves on it. The plant's not going to be able to sustain that much greenery right now while it's trying to establish roots. So I'm going to take these big leaves especially, just prune them off with my fingers. We want to reduce the stress on the plant. We want to reduce what we're asking of the plant. something more like this. Right? So now what we have is what, 6 leaves on this guy. And it actually has a little flower head that was starting to grow. So I'm going to pinch that out as well, because this was the very tip of the plant. Because again, we want to focus all of that energy and that oxygen into growing roots and branches and not necessarily growing leaves right now. So this one's tricky. I don't know if this is going to work. It's awfully short. It's going to be hard to keep. But I'm just going to take that and put just the tip of it in the water. Yeah, that's going to try and fall in. So I will probably get maybe a rubber band or something to hold that across the top and not fall in all the way. But you just want the tip of the stem to be in the water. Keep an eye on. You want to change the water maybe every 3 to 5 days. Make sure you stay submerged. If it starts to come out of the water, it could dry out, and then you're going to have a bad time. So same approach to the bigger stems here. Take off the big leaves. We don't want it to be putting its energy into supporting their ongoing photosynthesis. Photosynthesis causes energy, but trust me here, it's really more, I think, about taking the tops off and letting it focus on growing some more roots out of the bottom here. So I'm just going to lighten its load a little bit more, especially the little lower leaves down here, because they're also just going to be sitting down in the water. So this will work much better. That goes in. I like the long stem because then you can angle it. If it drops all the way in, no big deal. Set it back, right? This is ready to go. That's going to sit in a sunny window. I give it a little supplemental grow light from a cheapo grow light. Probably take about 2 to 3 weeks to have a really good set of roots on all of these. So I'm going to keep doing this with the rest. Big leaves. This will be an interesting one. Yeah, we're going to take these big leaves off and just leave this little top. Take off the starting of that flower. Here he goes. Just barely touching the water. But now I have 2. I'm going to go look at my other basil plants and fill the other 3 jars up because I know I have more that can be pruned. I'm going to do that. I'm going to set these in their propagation station home, if you will, and then we'll check on them in a few weeks. So you can see here, I found some more basil that needs trimmed, and I now have 5 cuttings that will be staying in just this little homemade propagation station. These are jars left over from Slim Chicken's desserts, and a piece of wood that I cut a few holes in. So simple setup. It's here in front of my window underneath a cheapo grow light, getting just a little bit of light, not too overwhelming. We will check on these in a few weeks to see how the roots are coming along and if they are ready for transplant. Nice little bonus here. Now I have a whole bunch of fresh basil to eat. It's great salads. It's great to use as a seasoning. Right? I like to chop it up really fine and put it on potatoes with garlic, onion, salt, pepper, and Parmesan. Put those in the oven or the air fryer. Delicious. So plenty of basil. Going to have plenty more basil plants soon. And this is a really, really easy thing for anybody to do. All right, so here they are after 10 days. I took them up to the kitchen to do a quick water change, and you can see we're starting to get root growth already. Ignore the hot sauce on the side of the jar, my bad. But every one of these has small roots growing, nothing crazy. But again, it's been 10 days. So you can see maybe an inch worth of root growth. We will come back and check on these in about another week and a half or so, because I think after 3 weeks we should have really good root growth on all of them. Let's take a look at their root growth. You can see the water level is really low here, but the root level is really high. So this is 3 weeks in just plain old water. There is nothing to be mad about there. That is very much ready to transplant into soil or into a hydroponic rig. Let's look at the rest of these. They're all really low on water. Again, beautiful root structure. Ready to transplant. Starting to sense a theme here. Looking very nice. This guy had the most foliage up top, and its roots caught up. A little bit of nastiness there at the end of this root, so I will clip that off, maybe hit the whole thing with just a touch of peroxide solution, make sure there's nothing nasty in there before I transplant. And lastly, let's look at the cinnamon basil, also very good root growth. So that tiny little thing, what's fun is it flowered. So this is going to need a little pruning already. We don't want that flower on there right now, but I will clip the top off, put this in some dirt, and it will be ready to thrive. So the roots look really good. It's been exactly 3 weeks. That's all the time it took to build those nice root systems. These are ready to go into bigger homes. So I'm going to put some in soil. I'm going to put some in hydroponic rigs, passive hydroponics, and I'll show you how to do that next. So we're going to do one in the soil here. We're going to do one hydro, and they're really simple. So it doesn't really matter which I do where. I happen to think that this guy looks funny with his curled stem, but he'll probably do better in the soil with this big massive roots. So all you need to do really is in your soil, make an opening for those roots, gently put him in, tuck those roots down to make sure you're going to get good growth out of them, and then fill the hole. Gotta make sure you push those air pockets out. You don't want to pack your soil too tight. You want to have good aeration. And that's all there is to it. I'll probably backfill a little more soil before I put that under lights, but that's ready to go. And for the hydro, I have a 3-inch net cup with hydroton or clay pebbles or leca or whatever you want to call it. I have a amber mason jar, happens to fit quite perfectly. So in the mason jar, I have about a half strength hydroponic nutrient. That is a grow formula. We don't really need to do a bloom or a flowering formula for basil. So in this one, I'm going to put the cinnamon basil that I need to take the top off of. We don't want those flowers on there. Not a good use of its energy right now. And really all I'm going to do, just for the sake of simplicity, I need to dump some of these pebbles out. So I am going to just use this jar as a temporary hold. Now I'm going to take this plant. There is a hole that I've cut out of the middle that's a little larger. I'm going to feed the roots through. One half of that main root through. Get the other half poked through. Now, got roots coming out the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and start adding the clay pebbles back in. Get this support. Doesn't take a whole lot more than this. Just want to go ahead and fill it all the way so that the whole stem is supported. Drop a few on the table while you're at it. Okay. This guy will grow roots through these rocks and start to give himself a little bit more support. Really, now we have this all set. So I'll put a few more here, help hold that stem in place. And I want to check the water levels on the jar. Hard to see on camera, but there's about a half-inch air gap there. And I've got the roots maybe an inch or so down into the solution. So that's going to start feeding that way. It's going to encourage it to grow more roots, and the rest of those roots will find their way down. We now have basil that will continue to grow new plants. And with these ones, again, as they grow, if we just do the trimming and the pruning of the top growth and the new growth, they'll get bushier. You'll have more plants you can then propagate if you so choose, and kind of an endless supply of basil. And just to show you real quick, this is the same plant that we trimmed 3 weeks ago. You can see it has got lots of new growth. Everything looks very healthy. It's starting to grow some flower buds, so I'll need to pinch those off here. But this plant is no worse for the wear. It's much more filled out. It's growing more evenly. Shorter node lengths in between leaf sets. So happy plant. Prune your basil often, and you will have happy plants as well. All right. So we have our basil plants transplanted. I've got a few more that I'm going to put into, I think, soil for the most part, but that's all there is to it. Really simple to do. Again, you want to make sure you're pruning your basil regularly. It'll help promote good growth on the parent plant. It'll give you new plants for yourself, so you have an endless supply of basil, or for your friends. Great gifts, especially if you start getting into some of the interesting varieties like cinnamon basil or lemon basil. There's a lot of them out there. Go check out what you can find, and then grow basil forever. Really easy. Something that I love to do. It's fun. I just really think it's cool that in 3 weeks we had such developed root systems by just putting these in a jar of water. So make sure to hit like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're not already. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time. Peace.